All right. Before we begin, let me just ask you if you can hear me now, because me and Tomek were sitting in completely different places. So, okay, I can see some yeses, so we can begin. Thank you very much. All right, so we've gathered here today to talk about technology a little, but also to talk about language. Well, I have this idea that sometimes we take too many technological things for granted. Too many, really. We take technology for granted. We sometimes assume that certain things are there and we don't know how they work. So so that was my idea behind this webinar. We hop on a plane and we wonder, what makes it fly? And there are many things like this. Some time ago, it was much easier. Every second man could fix a machine that they had at their home. And now it's almost impossible to fix, some technological devices. But I want to know how things work. And I think that you want to know it too. So let's combine some hunger for knowledge with learning a language. Okay? Very good then. So I have this plan, which you can probably see now. We're going to focus on three aspects. Planes, what makes them fly. We'll also change the subject dramatically and we'll find some explanations on the second subject, that is why do we sneeze, and we'll also, that's going to be our final theme, discuss what makes Mars red. Now, these questions to some of you may be obvious, maybe you know the answers to these questions, but the point is to try to work out these explanations in English, to learn some new language, and I hope you enjoy this little adventure with me now. Okay, so let's focus on planes. Right. How do they fly? Huge heavy machines, that seem to defy gravity by staying up in the air, yet airplanes fly around the world every day. And it's because they can create the forces they need to fly. And we will talk about these forces in a moment. Well, it's all about aerodynamics, right? Which means the way the air moves. There are four aerodynamics forces, and we will have a look at them in a moment. Okay, you can see a little red arrow on your left, and this arrow symbolizes the first force that I would like to talk about. It's called thrust. Now, that's the translation of thrust into Polish. Okay, we'll come back to it in a moment. Now, there's a second force that we have to take into account. It's called drag. Okay, drag. So there's thrust and there's drag, two opposing forces. And that's what drag means in Polish. Okay, fine. Now, thrust is something that planes need to create to balance out drag, right? So this plane, for example, it has a propeller which creates thrust. It creates speed, so to speak, right? So as the propeller turns, it draws air past its blades, and in this way it pulls the plane forward. Of course, there are planes which have different engines, but we have to focus on this one. Okay, so that's the first force, thrust. Okay, now what about drag? Well, drag is
the opposite force from thrust, of course, and it slows things down. Right? Now imagine trailing your hand in water as you sail along in a boat, right? Or you roll down your window in a car and you stick your hand outside. Well, this is drag, right? You can feel the air or the water push back against your hand. So air has the same effect on planes, well, and anything else that moves actually. So a plane's smooth surface and streamlined shape of the plane will help to reduce drag. Okay, so we have thrust and drag, and they need to be in a sort of a balance. Oh, right. Now, there are two more forces. Well, the third one is called weight. Yes, weight, just like in Polish. Well, that's what gravity does to a plane, of course. And the opposing force to weight is called lift. Now, lift is the opposing force to weight, and you know every plane creates most of its lifts with what? Of course, with its wings. And this is what lift means in Polish. Now, lift and weight, okay, we've got this worked out. Now, what does actually happen around the wing? Okay, this is very interesting because you see, as the plane moves, air flows over its wings, right? You can see that in the picture, right? And the top of the wing is curved, right? It's not straight, it's curved. And this is what makes the air above the wing move faster than the air under the wing, right? So let's focus on the air, right? Now, the slow-moving air under the wing pushes up more than the fast-moving air above the wing, and this creates lift, and this is why planes fly. So it's all about the balance between the four forces: the thrust, let's call it its speed, something that engines do, right, and drag, but mostly about lift and weight, right? This is probably not a very scientific explanation, but it's the best one I could give you, being a language teacher. Okay? Now, being stuck on a plane is a very strange feeling, because you cannot do anything as a passenger. Well, things are probably different if you're the pilot. So now we'll talk about maneuvering, okay? Now, this is very interesting, because planes have all sorts of different thingies around the wings and various parts of their fuselage, which make them turn and fly up and fly down. So one of the most important ones are flaps, right? Flaps are the little things which you can see moving if you sit on a plane, and you can see the wings that come down from the wing and are used to increase lift during takeoff and landing. Well, you have to imagine how air moves around the wing here, okay? Now, flaps are very important. They are useful to increase lift. That's very obvious. But there's also another thing. In the same wing, next time you're on the plane, you'll probably notice that you don't have only flaps. You also have, exactly, you have ailerons. And ailerons at the ends of wings, and well, they are used to roll the plane, right? Exactly. And notice when you roll the plane, for example, in the in the left, right? They have to be directed in two different positions.
just like in the picture, right? To keep it level, to keep it, you know, in the same position. So we've got flaps, we've got ailerons. There's also rudder, which is in the plane's tail, and it turns it left and right. Okay, this makes sense. You can imagine, you know, that something similar is in every boat, for example. So that's a rudder. And you also have elevators at the back of the plane, right? And elevators in the tail, well, they move up and down to balance the position of the nose. So again, you know, just like with the forces, with thrust and drag and lift and weight, these devices, they also have to keep the plane in balance. So, yeah, that's so simple. Right, okay. So, this has brought us some, you know, closer to the truth about why planes fly. And now we have time for some questions. Question number 1 is this. I'm counting on your answers in the chat box. What was the first airplane to stay up in the air successfully? Okay, does anybody know the answer to that question? I'm going to wait for like 2, 3, 4, 5 more seconds. What was the first plane to successfully fly up in the air? Okay, I've got the first answers. Brothers Wright. Okay, the Wright brothers. Very good. It was called the Wright Flyer. Exactly, and on its first outing in 1903, it flew for, yes, for that long, for 12 seconds. For 12 seconds, and this is what it looked like. Amazing, isn't it? That's the actual picture of the first flight, I think. So somehow they've managed to balance all the forces, the drag, the thrust, the lift and the weight. Maybe the rudders and propellers and flaps weren't very complicated, but they did it. Okay, so now it's time for you. The Wright brothers did it. Now it's your time. This is a little language puzzle. Okay, so please use the chat once more. Now, can you try to unscramble the 5 terms that we used not long ago, like 5 or 6 minutes ago? Okay. You can, in your chat box, you can write like 1. I can see some good answers now from Eva and from Bogdan. Very good. Okay, what's the third one? Double E, double L, double R, double P. That's definitely part of the plane. Very good. Propeller. Okay, so we've got thrust, propeller, drag. Okay. What about number 4? That was the thing that had a funny pronunciation. Okay, skip the 4th one. Ailerons. Very good, Bogdan. Very good. What about the 5th one? That's the one at the tail. Rudder. Thank you very much, Eva. Okay, okay, so let's have a look at it. It's thrust, drag, propeller, ailerons and rudder. And now let's try to translate these into Polish. Do you remember the Polish equivalents? Okay, use the chat again, please. So please translate thrust, drag, propeller, ailerons and rudder into Polish. Okay, let's have a mini lesson and a mini test. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I can see great answers. Yes, number 3 is Śmigło. Yes, of course. It wasn't translated, I think, but there was an arrow pointing to it. Okay, very good. So we have drag, number 1. Sorry, we have thrust, number 1, and drag, number 2, and a propeller, number 3. And we have... do you remember? Let me ask you... That's going to be a very tricky one. Now, use the chat again and try to translate number 4, lotki, into English. Do you remember? Do you remember what this is? It runs. Very good. Very good. Yes. You were wondering before what this is, right? Very good. And we've got rudder for stay. Excellent. All right. We know how planes fly. We've learned 5 words at least. Very good. I don't know how you feel today, but I feel quite good. But in the morning, I had to take some magic tablets because for some strange reasons I'm allergic to something, and it's almost winter now. But anyway, I sneezed a lot, so I thought, okay, so let's find the answer to this puzzle. Why do we sneeze? Now, this is not a very complicated process, definitely not. But when you read about it, when you read about what happens, well, you learn some new language, and sometimes it's kind of a useful language. This time it's going to be not technological English, but more of a medical English. Okay. So why do we sneeze? Well, I think that when we breathe in, the inhaled air, well, it sometimes contains dust, right? And sometimes some chemicals, sometimes some other irritants that can be harmful to the body, right? Particularly to the organs in the respiratory system, like the lungs, for example. So we've got those tiny hairs inside our noses. You know that, right? So while the tiny hairs inside the nostrils trap many of these particles, some will often get through, right? And to help you out, your body reacts and it tries to forcibly expel the offending particles, and this is called sneezing, or the sneeze reflex. And there are a number of reasons why we sneeze, right? Including well, to clear the nasal passages when you have a cold, for example, to expel allergens if you are allergic, like me, right, due to something. I'm not particularly sure what it is, and even bright sunlight can cause people to sneeze. I'm not sure why. Maybe you do. So anyway, when a stimuli is detected by the nerve endings in the nose, there are some impulses which are sent to the brain, and the brain initiates a chain reaction, so to speak. Some physiological events happen, and well, this is what happens actually. There are 6 stages, I think, and stage 1 is called irritation. So prior to irritation, actually, I have to show you a little caption in here. Prior to irritation, the diaphragm muscles are relaxed. Okay, diaphragm is the muscle in our tummy, right? And when an irritant enters the body, nerve endings in the lining of the nose send some signals to the brain. Okay, so we've got irritation, and this is what diaphragm is. That's the very important muscle that we have in our tummies. Okay, so so an irritant enters the body, nerve endings in the lining of the nose send signals to the brain. Okay, and there's some irritation, and the diaphragm is relaxed. Okay, so stage 2. In stage 2, muscles contract. So the brain tells the respiratory muscles, including throat, chest and diaphragm, to contract. Okay, now this is very interesting from the biological point of view, but I find it also interesting from the language point of view, because we have this word here, contract, right? Is it contract or contract? Well, exactly, right? That's my point for you. So contract is a verb, and a noun that is related to it is contraction. Okay, so it's like, you know, something, you know, contracts. Okay, but it's so different from the word contract, like contract of sale. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Okay, so muscles contract, and the brain tells the respiratory muscles to
to contract. Good. Now, the third stage is the intake of breath, right? It's the intake of breath. So the contraction of the diaphragm, you can try to do this maybe with like, you know, contraction of the diaphragm causes a sharp intake of breath. Now, so far so good, but I want to make a stop here. For those of you who are interested in the differences between two very similar words, breath and breathe. Breathing is doing this. This is breathing, right? And take a breath. Well, that's this, okay? So, stage 3, intake of breath. And then what happens? Then air pressure rises. So the brain, now it's the brain, right? The brain signals to the throat to close, okay? So the brain signals to the throat, you should close. And this combined with the contraction of abdominal muscles, I'll show you what abdominal means. So this combined with the contraction of abdominal muscles raises air pressure inside the lungs, okay? So now the abdomen works. Okay. We're almost there. Actually, this is when it happens. This is when we sneeze, right? This is when we do achoo. But, well, the throat reopens suddenly, explosively forcing air out of the body, making the chest cavity contract sharply, you know, and the diaphragm relaxes once again. And now is the funny part. Do you know what I mean? Because when we sneeze, something else happens, right? It's about the mucus. Now, together with the offending irritant, saliva and mucus from inside our mouths, and from the nasal cavity too, that's very funny sometimes, are also expelled from the body. So, you know, mucus and saliva, they are expelled from the nasal cavity and from the mouth. You know that happens, right? But do you know at what speed they fly out of our noses and mouths? Now, this is something for you to discover. What's the speed? What do you think in kilometers per hour? What's the speed with which mucus and saliva are expelled from our noses and mouths when we sneeze? Well, Krzysztof, actually, you're very close. Łukasz, you have to add 10 kilometers to that. Eva, you have to add about 60 kilometers to that. Agnieszka, very good. Agnieszka, are you a doctor? Well, it's 160 kilometers per hour. So no matter what you do, you know, you can't avoid it, or other people can't avoid it if they are so unlucky to be, you know, somewhere close to you. So it's better to have some, you know, some Kleenex around when you sneeze. Okay, good. Right. So this is how sneezing works. Very interesting. And now I have another question to you. Again, we'll play with the language. Now, we talked about these things in English. Now let's try to work out the equivalent of those Polish words into English. Okay, I'm waiting for your answers. You will get some feedback in about, I don't know, 7 seconds. So try to use the chat. I've got some good answers for number 1. It's going to be irritation. Very good. Diaphragm. That's number 2. Funny spelling. So be careful. Right. What about number 3? Yes, saliva. Mucus. Well, it's. I'm not sure because I'm not a doctor, you know. If we could say that mucus is a kind of saliva or that saliva is a kind of mucus, I think these could be 2 different things. What about number 4? And I'm not looking for the word tummy or belly. I'm looking for the medical. Word, and Bogdan and Krzysztof give the right answers, and Eva too. That's abdomen. And mucus, well, I think that's going to be number 5. Okay, so we've got irritation,
that's podrażnienie, diaphragm, przepona, saliva, ślina, abdomen, that's brzuch, right? And mucus, that's the funny little thing that gathers in our noses, for example. Okay, so now I feel well informed, I guess. Right. So you know, it's really funny, you know. Sometimes children, you know, ask us, this, you know, such questions. My son, for example, you know, he 2 weeks ago he asked me, Dad, what makes candles, you know, put out when we blow on them, you know, like what does actually happen? Because when we blow air out of our lungs, you know, and there's a chunk of wood which is almost on fire, you know, it catches fire. So why does candle put out when we blow some air on it? And believe me or not, the explanation is not as trivial as you may think. So because it's very complicated, actually, I thought about another question that my son asked me. Why is the surface of Mars red? Why is it red? Well, you're about to learn the reason. This time we will well, just try to think for a moment, okay? What makes it red? What I'm going to offer you right now is I'm going to offer you a little listening exercise, okay? I'm going to tell you why it's red, but I'm going to use, in my little story, I'm going to use names of 3 chemical elements, all right? And I would like you to note down the names of those 3 chemical elements. Okay, you ready? Okay, so this is what I should have told my son when he asked me about it. Then I did some research, and now I know how the red planet got its iconic color. Well, the red color that we usually see in images of Mars is actually the result of iron rusting. So, you see, it's like this. Rocks and soil on the surface of Mars contained a dust which composed mostly of iron and small amounts of other elements such as chlorine and sulfur. And the rocks and soil were eroded by wind, and the resulting dust was blown across the planet's surface by the activity of ancient volcanoes. Well, actually, recent evidence suggests that dust was also spread across Mars by water. Yeah, water, really. And there's a theory backed up by some, you know, the presence of channels and ducts across the planet's surface. So yeah, it's iron rusting, and the thing that we probably are not very much aware of, that there are also some other elements there in big quantities, that is chlorine and sulfur. Okay, so what are the names of 3 elements I have just mentioned? Okay, any it's not gold. It's not gold ever, but it's definitely one of the elements you mentioned. Okay, we've got, oh right, Łukasz, very good. We've got sulfur, chlorine and iron. You were the first to name those 3 elements. So this is why Mars is red, yeah. Well, because there's a lot of iron and chlorine and sulfur, and well, maybe because of water, they underwent some, you know, chemical processes, and they just started to rust. Well, it's also very, very interesting because the iron contained within the dust then reacted with oxygen in the atmosphere, and this is what produced the distinctive red color. And while the sky appears red because, you know, storms
carried the red dust up into the planet's atmosphere. Yeah, so this dusty surface, which is between a few millimeters and 2 meters deep sometimes, it also sits above a layer of hardened lava, which is mostly composed of basalt. So the concentration of iron that is found in the basalt is much higher than it is in the basalt here on Earth, and well, this also, according to scientists, contributes to the red appearance of Mars. Okay, so okay, next time you you take your binoculars out and you look at the red planet, well, you know why it's red. All right. So planes, sneezing, the red color of Mars. Now, where have all this led us? Well, actually, it leads me actually to thinking. Whenever I have a question like this, why is something, you know, I don't know, why microwaves do their job the way they do? I probably do the same as you do, right? I go to Wikipedia, I go to YouTube, and this is how I learn about what makes these things work, but also learn new language. And I think you don't have to limit yourself only to English. You can you know, take the same steps learning any other language, really. YouTube, Wikipedia are my favorite sources, very obvious sources, but you know, I think they contain the most information that I want to learn. But there are some other websites, and I'll definitely make sure to include these two addresses in some PDFs that me and Tomek will send you. How Stuff Works and Animagraphs. How Stuff Works is a great resource for those of you who want to ask some silly questions and get some really learned answers. And Animagraphs, well, it's all about very nice GIF explanations, you know, so moving explanations of how engines and other devices work. So I would like to recommend you these two. All right, thank you for joining me on this adventure journey. I hope you you will remember some of the explanations and maybe even some of the words we talked about. So why don't we have a short question session now? Maybe you would like to send me a little answer, or I'm going to send you a little answer, a little question, or anything. Okay, I can see. I can see the first question coming. Very good. What other sources can you use? Well, actually, there is another portal I sometimes use, and it's called Quora, Q-O-U-R-A, Quora.com, and you know what, Agnieszka? If you look up why candles are put out when we blow cold air from our mouths in their direction, you'll definitely find the answer there, because it's really complicated. I'm not prepared, but my son was happy with my explanation. Okay, so I would like to encourage you to explore some new language and to learn how things work, because you know this is what we need sometimes to be better, you know, just better people, I guess, you know, to better ourselves. Not only language, but also knowing how science works. Okay, so with that serious remark, I'm going to end. I'm going to thank you very much for being here, and I'm just wondering if Tomek wants to say anything, and I can see in our little communicator that he wants to say goodbye to you all, and I do that with much pleasure as well. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję Ci, Piotrze, jak zawsze za bardzo ciekawe webinarium. Oczywiście, że chcę coś na koniec jeszcze powiedzieć. Chciałbym Państwa zaprosić na kolejne webinaria w tym miesiącu. Jak zawsze mamy język angielski, rosyjski i niemiecki. 22 listopada rosyjski, 29 listopada język niemiecki. Tak jak wspominał Piotr, po webinarium w ciągu kilku dni wyślemy do Państwa prezentacje i materiały z dzisiejszego webinarium. Na koniec również pojawi się króciutka ankieta. Jeśli Państwo będą mieli chwilkę, mogą Państwo ocenić naszą pracę i wysłać nam sugestie tematów na kolejne webinaria. A więc z mojej strony dzisiaj to wszystko i do usłyszenia niedługo.